Back to Market on Close. I'm Marley Caden. All eyes will be on Palantir as the AI company will report earnings after the close. Expectations are sky high as the stock has run up more than 100% in 2025, with headlines last week after the second quarter already ended after it received a $10 billion contract from the U.S. Army. Joining us now to preview the numbers is Paul McCarthy, the president of Kisco Capital. Now, everyone looking forward to Palantir and what they're going to put out, mostly because of their incredibly impressive performance year to date. You know, what are you expecting from them after the bell?
A quarter, but I think to kind of key on what the market's really looking for is to see how well they're growing their commercial side of their business. Most of their revenue historically has come from the U.S. And for a company that's doing about $4 billion a year in revenue, adding another $1 billion on is good news. But I think that there's a very large market in AI on the commercial side of the business, about what it is that they're really focusing on and getting more success on. Looking at things like their backlog, getting over $2 billion would be another signal of continued strength. But I think the revenues, because there's such a high valuation metric on the stock right now, it's really implying that the revenues are going to accelerate in the coming quarters and years. So we got some evidence predict these types of contracts are very chunky. It's great that they're getting them, but I think that we want to see more sustainable, repeatable revenue from the private sector. So I'm looking for the things that they're thinking about for AI. And in the past, their CEO, Alex Karp, has made mention that if companies are going to be onshoring, for example, manufacturing. So it would be good to hear just a little bit more color around how things are going in that regard.
And for that commercial growth, you know, we've seen them have revenue growth for the past 7 quarters. It's accelerated really. Are you looking for?
You know, something that tells me that the valuation is not so crazy, but I mean, they're really going to have to start, you know, like getting on revenues, looking at 50% plus, and just looking at, you know, what sort of things they're looking at, the scope of work they're doing. But you would have to see some very high growth numbers.
You know, and the stock is trading, I mean, it's priced to perfection right now, top performer in the S&P this year. And it's has a sky-high valuation. We've seen this already with companies, this valuation still taking a beating afterwards. Do you think that Palantir is at risk for that?
Yeah, for sure. You know, I was on earlier this year, and, you know, I'd said the stock was probably headed up to the mid. I think that we're seeing, you know, there's sort of a, you know, Fibonacci extension resistance around 163, which is trading right there. So I do think that you could see in the coming quarters good back, and which would actually be a healthy thing. So if you're a long-term investor, you may have a chance to get, you know, in a much lower price. So, but it's a really volatile stock. So, I mean, if, you know, see it go higher, but I think that, you know, at this point in the calendar, given what happened earlier in the year, there's probably more investors thinking about taking profits. So I think that that's my expectation on this stock, and that have a pullback that would be significant. So, I mean, if you look at the chart over the last several years, it's just like a hockey stick going straight up. And, you know, I'd say that the market preventing that from going on, you know, ad infinitum. So I think that you'll see a pullback at some point. It's a great stock if you're a trader. If you're an investor, it's probably a great stock for
notes earlier. You know, you made mention of a 5-wave advance developing. You know, for you, is that signaling that we may be entering a corrective price action phase? And if so, how long might that? Look
at Elliott wave. That's an impulsive move that tells you for the long term you're developing a bullish pattern. But this pattern is getting pretty full to the upside. So it would correction, and just how the Elliott wave works. When you have a correction, you kind of revisit where the previous 4th wave would be down in the 60s. I don't know if at this point it'd get down that far, but it would probably take several months. But so that's relative strength index has had a negative divergence that's been building since earlier this year. And so when you look at longer term charts, like a weekly chart, and you see that developing, that means that it's dying down sort of like under the hood. And you should just be aware that, you know, with overhead resistance and these other technical factors, that it's just something to be cautious on. Doesn't mean the company's near term. I think it's something to just really pay attention to.
And one last question for you, Paul. We already touched on that about 60% of the revenue comes from these government contracts, and Palantir does appear to be a favorite right now. How important and influential is competition going to be in that sector for them in this report?
One thing, Microsoft comes to mind when you say that. I think that they're going to be a competitor. They're investing very, very heavily in AI. So I think if anyone has to look over their shoulder for Palantir, and it would be someone like Microsoft. They just have a lot of dollars that Palantir is going to have to just shine on what their proprietary software can do that maybe someone else can't do. And I think it's hard to, if you're not a user, I've never used their software directly, but whether their software is proprietary or not.
Well, we will see just a little over a half hour. We'll find out. But thank you so much, Paul, for being with us. That's Paul McCarthy from Kisco Capital to help us preview Palantir's earnings.